to tonight's Cities Association of Santa Clara County public meeting. If we can take roll call. Auden?
Ivy,
Present.
Moore,
Here.
Blankley,
Here.
Liger,
And so that's really a huge thing with the CIP. I think as I look down on it tonight, and
Carmen, there you go. Thank you.
Liger.
every project that this council's going to approve.
Okay. Sayok,
Here.
Montano,
Here.
Turner,
First, CIP
Constantine,
approved.
Present.
Slow down.
Apasoga,
I know. See the C, man?
Here.
Yeah. Take care of it.
Dubois,
But no, it's
Here.
like we have
Jones,
to take the first step
Present.
towards
Gilmore, or Watanabe,
an honor to
Zhao,
Here.
that we're facing in our society and in our lives. So
oh, and Mock is now present.
Present.
Okay, thank you.
And Sunnyvale's present.
Oh.
Tonight's Cities Association of Santa Clara County public meeting. We can take roll call. Auden?
Ivy,
Present.
Moore,
Here.
Blankley,
Auden, also Liang is also here as well, so I'll move. We'll move you over, Kitty.
Actually, that's okay. Kitty can attend. I'll just, yeah, good. I'll take it.
okay.
Okay, well then we'll move you over, Liang, okay?
Okay.
Okay.
And I'm here now in place of Lisa. Playing musical chairs tonight.
Thank you, Councilmember Watanabe.
Okay.
And for some reason, my audio was blanking in and out. So have we completed roll call?
Yes, we've completed.
Okay, thank you. I apologize for that. I was hearing different things. Okay, so we did have a closed session prior to this. At closed session, the board unanimously accepted legal counsel Shantine Koplo's resignation. Based on the reasons contained in the letter of resignation, the executive board will be the interim project manager for the Santa Cruz, Santa Clara County Roundtable. The executive director will continue to manage the ESA contract, and the executive board unanimously hired Kat Wellman as interim counsel, and her contract is included as a consent item. Under 2D and E, there are 2 additional consent items that we discussed under closed session. Thank you. And so that being said, I now look to closed session, and I ask my colleagues, would anyone like to pull anything from consent? See no hands raised from the attendees list. If anyone would like to pull anything from consent. And I don't see any. And so I go back to my colleagues and I look for a motion for approval of all items A through F.
Motion to approve.
Okay. Councilmember Watanabe's motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I heard Jones. Okay. Auden?
Okay. Klein,
Yes.
Zhao,
Aye.
Watanabe,
Yes.
Jones,
Aye.
Dubois,
Group, and
Yes.
we do have a lot of different
Apasoga.
youth groups,
Aye.
sports groups, and we don't have MOUs with them. So just want to make sure we understand, is it
Colleagues,
just for the
could I ask you to put yourselves on mute? Thank you.
Constantine,
Aye.
Turner,
Yes.
Montano.
Absolutely. I do want to say the first
Montano.
in agreement.
Yes.
Sayok.
Yes.
Mock.
Yes.
Fliger.
Yes.
Langley.
Here.
This is a
Yes.
Moore
Aye.
and Bybee.
Aye.
Okay. And motion passes with 8 ayes. Thank you.
Very much. Okay, so now we move to a Silicon Valley Clean Energy presentation. Andy, would you like to provide an intro, or will our presenters be going straight into it?
I think our presenters can do that. I'll hold on, let me let them in.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. It's good to see you, Girish. Welcome.
Thank you. Real pleasure. And Andy, shall I share the screen, or are you going to use the presentation from your end?
You can go ahead and share your screen. You should be able to. Or do
Okay.
you?
I will do that. Just give me 1 sec. Okay. Sorry, it'll take me 30 seconds here. Okay, got it. Okay. Thank you very much, Andy, for getting me on the agenda for today. My name is Girish Balachandran. I'm the CEO of Silicon Valley Clean Energy. With me, I also have one of my team members. I have Zoe Elizabeth, who is leading up this project. And this project is around community energy resilience for our SVC member agencies. And I can see 12 out of the 15 Cities Association members will be eligible for this. Also wanted to recognize several of our board members, and especially Carmen Montano from Milpitas, who was part of voting for this package. So most of you know about, I hope, about Silicon Valley Clean Energy because you all had a part to play in its founding. It was right at Cities Association where the idea to create SVCE was really floated and took shape. So thank you very much for that. And you've really made a big difference in our whole region. So I'll just get down to the bottom line here. Once COVID hit, our board started to talk about what can we do to help the community from a big picture, and let's do something bold. So they set aside $10 million. $5 million was set aside for contractor training, helping our small commercial customers and low-income customers. So all those programs are going forward, but we've also set aside $4.7 million for member agency resiliency grants. And the reason we did that is, we were thinking, well, with not just COVID hitting us, but we have these power supply shutoffs too, with all the fires. And we want to make sure that all our critical facilities are strengthened so that you can get through emergency situations. So this money was set aside to invest in your jurisdiction's energy resilience. And it's not, it's for planning grants and for capital expenditures. We actually set aside, we said it was going to be through 2021. And actually, Margaret Abikoga said, with COVID, things are going to take time. Let's move it and give people some additional time. Here are what funds are available for each of your jurisdictions. So it's divided up by the size of your energy demand. And As far as notification of availability of these grant funds, about 3 months ago, I spoke to all your city managers at the Santa Clara City Managers Association. This whole program was also designed, the details of the program were put together by a lot of your staff. We have something called the Member Agency Working Group. So they were involved in putting it together. But we wanted to make sure that all of you as city council members representing your city, you were aware of this opportunity too. So of this grant allocation, the idea is up to 20% can be spent on planning grants. But if you don't want that money for a planning grant, all 100% can be spent on capital expenditure. The application process is super simple. It's a 2-page application process. It's on our website. I'll give you the information here also, but we've communicated at various levels in your organization so that you're all aware. And over here we have the cities of Montecito and Milpitas have applied for their grants of $700,000 and $18,000 respectively, and they've been approved. We've also hired a consultant, Bureau Happold, who would be available to you as your planning consultant. So we have them under contract. And so you can use the monies under this planning grant to be directed to the consultant. So you can start this project or your resiliency efforts as soon as possible. So over here, climate change increases power outages. And it's basically in terms of emergencies, you want your critical facilities to be up as long as possible. And that's what this program endeavors to do. The kinds of project types, as far as planning goes, you can supplement your climate resiliency plan using this money. You can use it for community engagement. And on the capital expenditure side, you can spend it on a solar storage backup system, resilient EV charging, and portable batteries to support medically fragile customers. So this is overall, it's the number here of 5.15 million is we've added some of our own program money, SVC program money to this to allow for regional planning. So we are doing a regional resiliency and vulnerability study. And then of course, anything that you need for your planning grants and your capital grants will be available. So here is the website that you can go to get more information. And as far as one-on-one information, we can contact Zoe Elizabeth or myself, and we'd be happy to help you or your staff through this process. So that's all I have as far as my presentation is concerned, and I'd be happy to take any questions from you.
Thank you. And so, colleagues, any questions? Okay, I see. Oh, yes, Councilmember Moore.
I'm just curious what the other cities that have already been approved, what their projects were very briefly.
Zoe, could you please answer that? Thank you. Unmute.
Yep. The city of Milpitas has 2 solar plus storage backup projects, one at a senior facility and one at a community center. And similarly, Montecito also will be doing a solar backup project at a smaller community and emergency operations center.
Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Girish. It was good to see you, and thank you for the amazing work that all of you are doing. I know many of our cities will be taking this back to our other colleagues, and hopefully next time you come visit, we can say that all cities have received their own grants.
That's right. We're really looking forward to it. And thank you, Mariko, for the opportunity to speak to the Cities Association. We so much appreciate the partnership that we have with you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Good night, Zoe. Okay, we now move to a Chamber of Commerce Association presentation. I'll let Andy also speak to this, but I know one of the priorities that we've highlighted last year as well as this year is business recovery and resilience for our businesses as they go through COVID environment. And with us tonight, we have almost all the Chamber of Commerces of our participating cities to speak to us on some of their top concerns and how they think we can be working together. And so, Andy, anything you'd like to add on to that?
No, I don't want to add anything. I'm just trying to move them over. I do not see Catherine here. I just moved Mark Turner over. Mark, is there anyone else joining you?
I see Peter Katz. Actually, I see
Okay.
lots of Peter Katzes.
Yes, we should have
Okay.
Catherine should be with us, and also Eddie Trong. I don't know if you see Eddie.
I see lots of Peter Katzes. So,
Peter's a popular guy.
okay, somebody, one of them has raised their hand, so I'm gonna promote them to panelists because I'm assuming that must be someone. I think after their presentation, I think we'll have more comments, and I think that I know that business resiliency is something that we're all concerned about, and part of our COVID, and something that we've been talking to the county a lot about. And so I think it would just be good to hear from them, and then to hear your dialogue.
Okay, and I see two more Peter Katz's hands up.
Yep. So I'm going to allow them to talk. There we go.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know if those are all Peter or others, but I know that those of us who were designated to speak tonight and had information to say were Catherine and Eddie. And if they're not able to, I'll fill in as best I can for what they were going to say.
Okay.
Shall I go ahead and
All
get
right.
started?
Well, I can move them over. I've got two here that I can move over. I've already moved over another Peter Katz. Oh, there, somebody, are one of you Catherine?
The real Peter Katz is on.
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. Okay, that's okay then. I'll start. I think Eddie probably is on as well, but okay, I'll go ahead and start. I'll just pretend, well, I'm not Peter Katz, but my name is actually Catherine Summers, and I'm the Executive Director of the Los Gatos Chamber of Commerce. And I want to first just thank you so much for including us this evening. Believe it or not, we've been eagerly awaiting this opportunity to meet all of you and be here tonight. I especially want to thank my own mayor, Mariko Sayak. I think she often hears me mention the coalition. And because she's a curious mayor, I think she wanted to hear a little bit more about who we are and what we do. The Silicon Valley Chamber Coalition was started about 15 years ago. 18 chambers are now actively participating in all of our efforts, everything that we're working on. And while we know that our individual towns and our cities face unique challenges, we have found that we are all very much alike when it comes to the big issues. This COVID pandemic is a big issue and has really united us. At the beginning of the COVID pandemic, we were meeting actually every few days, probably much like you were. And our efforts around small business advocacy and local initiatives were what were at the forefront of our minds. They're working. We've witnessed how much stronger we are together and what we can really do as a group. Together, we represent thousands of businesses with all of our chamber members and hundreds of thousands of employees. The challenges that we face are insurmountable right now. So we are seeking your help. You probably have heard that we are huge proponents of the county's loan program, and we've been relentlessly pushing for the supervisors to pass that next 19 million in seed money for that initiative. And we've also been very active in the campaign aimed at safely reopening our economies, the Santa Clara economy in particular, of course. So thank you again for having us. I'm now going to turn it over to our president of the coalition, Mark Turner from the Gilroy Chamber. Thanks.
Thank you, Catherine, and thank you, mayors, for allowing us to take the time to be with you tonight. We appreciate the opportunity to meet all of you and take some time to talk a little bit about the Chamber Coalition. as Catherine mentioned, we do represent hundreds of thousands of employees and their families. We really took on an effort here just back in September with regards to a safe reopening. There are about 5 core competencies that chambers of commerce typically work within. 2 of them happen to be around the area of advocacy, one being representing the interests of business with government, and the other is political action. And the coalition really came together back in September around this issue of safely reopening the economy. As many of you know, we face a real challenge in Santa Clara County with our health officer, who tends to be much more restrictive than the governor as far as allowing different tiers to be open. So we began a lobbying effort back in September with a news conference. It was a virtual conference. We talked about a 5-point plan to safely reopen. After that, we really took on a media campaign where we were able to muster about 1,500 emails that we were to send into the county supervisors, along with about 300 people calling into a Board of Supervisors meeting, especially after we had really built a coalition with the faith community as well. So we really began to pick up some steam there around that particular issue. And over these last several months, there have been several other issues that we have coalesced around and worked with the county. I would have to say probably initially, the county supervisors didn't take our efforts very seriously. But since then, we have really concentrated our efforts on building relationships with the county supervisors, working with them on issues that we can be aligned with. And they totally understand the fact that in some cases, we'll be opposed to some of their ordinances. That's just part of what it happens. We probably face similar issues with each of you at times, but the fact is we work together with our elected officials to make things happen. And we do that on the county level, and we do that regionally now, so that all of the chambers involved in this coalition can come together. And what we have found is that when we speak with one united voice, we have the attention of our county supervisors. And so the things that we're hoping to do tonight is really not just introduce ourselves to you. Many of you probably have heard about us from each of the chambers speaking with each of their mayors. But what we had hoped to accomplish tonight was also the opportunity to establish a relationship with you, because we know over the coming weeks, we're going to be having conversations about the various tiers that we could be moving into. And with the tendency that we have seen in the past, with Dr. Cody being one who's just a little bit more restrictive, we just felt that between the coalition's effort of 18 chambers of commerce and all of the mayors of our cities within Santa Clara County, we could speak with a more united voice, putting pressure on our supervisors and on other county officials to make sure that we align with the governor as we begin to move into those various tiers. By failing to do so, it's a negative impact on our business community in Santa Clara County. We have found that in the past, when other counties are opening up before us and we get held off for months at a time, our residents are taking their spending money and going to other counties to spend that money. So we feel it's very important, both for the health of our economy and the health of our businesses, that we stay aligned with the governor. And we just wanted to put that out there and ask for your support in that as we move forward. And however we can bring that together, obviously each of the chambers executives will have conversations with their mayors and councils, but we just wanted to see if we couldn't get some commitment from you, and you would have a commitment from us that we could work together to make that happen.
Wonderful. And then do you have another speaker, Mark?
Yeah, forgive me. Yes, this would be Eddie Trong, also known as Peter Katz this evening, but Eddie Trong, who is with the SVO, will be speaking as well.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mark. And thank you, mayors, vice mayors, and council members for inviting the Chamber Coalition here today. I think we had a hiccup because we used Peter Katz's login. And so there's perhaps 15 Peter Katz's. So I apologize. We could use more Peter in our community, though. He's a great public servant. So thank you for that. Again, my name is Eddie Trong. I'm with the Silicon Valley organization. We're a member of the Chamber Coalition, as you already know. I have another ask of the mayors, vice mayors, and council members here today. First, a little bit of context. Many of you know that in an ideal world, small businesses would rather earn their own income rather than take any handouts from a third party or government agency. But I think we can all agree that we live in extraordinary times today, and small businesses absolutely need all the help they can get to survive this pandemic. This is an equity issue, and we will not have a true economic recovery if our small businesses are left behind and our communities lose the very essence and fabric of their communities when our small businesses are gone. The Chamber Coalition is asking each mayor and their respective city councils to prioritize grant programs or other forms of financial relief for small businesses. In particular, you could either work within your own budgetary constraints to find these grant programs for small businesses, or as the Biden administration begins their next round of stimulus dollars for state and local government funding, there could be an opportunity for us to partner and to allocate more dollars for financial small business relief. In addition, the Chamber Coalition would like to continue this dialogue with each of you to continue talking about other ways that we can help small businesses and other partnerships that we can conceptualize. Our coalition does not believe that we have all of the solutions to help save our small businesses, but with some of these ideas about advocating together to safely reopen the economy, to address the issues of rising poverty and joblessness, and to also provide small business financial assistance to both help small business today and also at the same time facilitate economic recovery for years to come. And thirdly, to open a dialogue with you in other forms of assistance. We look forward to working with you on this effort. At this time, whether it's Catherine, Mark, or myself, we're happy to take any questions or to receive any comments from you. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, any questions? I don't see any questions. And so before I open for comment, I'm going to look to any other attendees that would like to speak on this matter. I have several more Peter Katz's in the attendance chat, but if there's anyone else who'd like to speak, just make sure you raise your hand.
Steve Preminger has raised
raising his hand.
Steve Preminger has raised his hand on the panelist side.
Okay. I don't see any other hands. So Steve.
Thank you. I'm Steve Preminger. I'm on the Cities Association representing the county, and I appreciate your presentation. I think you make a lot of very important points. I don't think really anybody can disagree with them. My one question, and I'll save comments for a little later, have you been approached by Supervisor Chavez or others to help with the ambassador program? The ambassador program, in short, and I know many council members and mayors are familiar with it, are an attempt to help educate the public how they can best prevent the spread of the virus by wearing masks, distancing, not partying like it's 1999 on Lunar New Year and things like that. I think everybody here can easily agree that if we can get our numbers down, a lot of the things that we're all looking forward to are more likely to happen. But to try to bring that into a question, having everybody working together, including the faith communities, is one really important element.
Steve, I can answer that question, and thank you. We appreciate that. I've had a number of conversations with Supervisor Chavez, and her and I are working out a timeline when we might be able to get her to speak to our coalition. I think at that point, she would speak to all of our chambers about that ambassador program. She has spoken to me briefly about it. And I think each of our chambers are putting out information pretty consistently about safety protocols and those sorts of things. But, and again, I can't speak on behalf of each and every chamber with regards to whatever conversation Supervisor Chavez may have had with them. But I think at this point, it probably has not happened on a larger scale. But we are certainly aware of the precautions that need to be taken, because we agree. All of these problems that we're addressing tonight, or at least commenting on, could easily be handled if again we could slow the spread. A lot of that, of course, is happening from these family gatherings that we've learned about, and sadly, when the county has to take these steps to slow that spread, oftentimes that tends to at least feel like it penalizes the small business community when that occurs. Does that answer your question, Steve?
Sure, thank you.
I just did get a note. I saw that from Peter Katz. Several of their members are in fact involved in the ambassador program. So there you go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Carmen? You're on mute.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry, my hand didn't work. So I had a question for Mr. Turner, I believe.
Sure.
The speaker that's just spoke right now. Oh, Mark Turner, how you doing?
Yeah.
So your organization, I've heard of your organization, and I'm glad that you're really promoting business, because without businesses, the economy, that's what makes the world go round, you know, the economy. But your organization specifically, what do you, since we are a very diverse county, community, regionally, what are you doing to promote diversity on your staff, and what is are you reflecting the community? Does your organization reflect the community is what I'm asking.
Yes, yes, and we appreciate that. And so you know that the coalition, first of all, is made up of 18 different chambers of commerce. We don't have paid staff. The executives of each of those chambers really kind of make up the board, if you will. And we actually had a conversation about this a couple of months ago with regards to equity and inclusiveness. And when you look at the chambers of commerce that are involved in this coalition, you do get a broad sense that we are diverse in a great way. We have the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce as a part of it, the Black Chamber, the Rainbow Chamber. Of course, each of our individual cities' chambers are involved. We have reached out to the other various chambers of ethnic backgrounds and have invited them to participate. So from a coalition standpoint, we have great diversity within our ranks.
Right, from a coalition standpoint, but I'm talking about your staff.
Well, each of our, again, I don't know. Again, the coalition does not have a staff. Each of our individual chambers have staff members, and we have certainly diversity within each of our staffs. Again, I could not speak about Sunnyvale staff or Mountain View staff. I can certainly speak about the Gilroy Chamber staff, and there is great diversity. 75% of our staff are women.
Well, I'm glad that you're promoting diversity. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely, thank you, Carmen. And we understand, and we understand how important that topic is, and it is something that's on the front of our minds.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Moore.
Thank you. I have a question for Mark. I'd like some clarification around this collaboration with regards to alignment with the governor, and if you're trying to describe some friction between what the governor has and what we have locally for requirements in our county, and because it seems like we're kind of being asked to look to the governor and rather than our own public health director. And could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. Again, what we look for is an alignment with where the governor allows us to open into, to go into let's say we're going to go into the orange phase or orange tier next. We would hope that the county would also align with that. I understand that we have numbers that we have to track and pay attention to, and certainly the science is very important. But we have found that over these months where the county of Santa Clara falls into a more restrictive category, it doesn't necessarily relate to the fact that the spread doesn't get any worse. What we do find, though, is that businesses suffer greatly. And so we have those challenges. And that's why we, again, we represent the interests of business, and certainly not the interests of business over the health of individuals. We understand how important that is. But what we have found is over these months, the health of our business community has suffered greatly, while the spread in some cases doesn't necessarily change because businesses are closed. We find what happens is in these large family gatherings and party gatherings that are happening in private homes, the impact, of course, is on the business community because they're the ones who suffer being shut down. So that's where we're coming from, and hoping that the county would consider aligning with the governor as we move through these tiers, especially when counties around us open up and we stay more in a more restrictive state. Again, that the leakage that occurs from the economic position is bad for our economy, bad for our county, and certainly bad for the tax revenue that goes out to other counties.
Thank you. And I do notice another Peter Katz in the attendee list has his hand up. And so I want to make sure I'm calling on people from the public as well. Peter, would you like to speak?
I just put it in the chat, actually. It was in response.
Okay.
It was in response to Carmen's comment, to let her know that we are working a lot on diversity. And in fact, we've been working with other organizations too, to make sure that the word gets out to our businesses, because if you haven't heard about it, the 25 by 25 diversity initiative that the Silicon Valley Leadership Group has put together has been a very powerful and aggressive force in terms of really forcing our board of directors of our major corporations to really examine their diversity issues.
And I do have a question on that, Peter. So Dr. Cortez of Silicon Valley Leadership Group, she's amazing. Does she do these policy sessions at a charge, or I'm curious if that's something that the coalition brings her to each individual chamber?
Well, all I can say is we didn't pay her a penny. She was kind enough to give her time freely.
Okay, I'll remember that. Thank you. And then this is kind of comical, but there's another Peter Katz in the attendee public list that would like to speak.
No, this is not Peter Katz. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Could you identify yourself?
Please, my name is Dennis King. I'm with the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. I recognize a good number of you. I just want to echo our colleagues. We are a founding member of the Chamber Coalition. So we practice what we preach with diversity. But I also wanted to acknowledge the county's contribution to small businesses. So 10 years ago, they backed our effort to host and manage a small business development center. We now have 2 of them. We have had the joy of working in almost all of your cities with the small businesses in this past year. 4 of your cities that we'll work with, and I see Carmen is nodding, and I greatly appreciate working with her. The cities of Sunnyvale, Cupertino, Milpitas, and the city of San Jose all had grant programs that we managed. So we have been in touch with over 2,000 small businesses and providing them either grants directly or indirectly, or services to help them. That would not have happened without the support of the County of Santa Clara. So I'm very thankful for that. And Steve Preminger in your group has been a great champion of ours. But we've been honored to work with the coalition on these issues and others, not just in policy matters, but just in practical, real world experience to help entrepreneurs, particularly those that have been marginalized. So our SBDC program tonight, for example, is announcing the statewide diversity inclusion program, where we're going to specifically reach out to African Americans to help them get the resources they need, not just to survive this, but to build a better future for them and for the overall community. So I appreciate your comments about diversity. I'm not complaining. There's a lot to do for all of us. I'm greatly admiring a number of the communities that you've been very proactive to help small businesses. I'm actually very delighted that we can have conversations about helping small businesses instead of just taxing them or regulating them, but you're recognizing that they are a major reflection of all of our communities. So for that, I want to again personally thank all of you for all of your attention to our local communities.
Thank you. And I have one more Peter Katz with his hand raised, as well as Eddie. And so if the other Peter Katz can identify themselves.
Hi, I feel like I'm watching an old TV game show. Will the real Peter Katz please stand up? This is Chuck Page of the Saratoga Chamber of Commerce and a member of the coalition. And just want to thank you all for your attention and let you know that we are doing everything we can to help small business recover. And keep in mind that small businesses are the core of many of our cities. I know some of you got bigger companies than we do in Saratoga, but they are the core of where our people go, our people enjoy life. And without them in business and their employees don't get paid, their employees don't have health care, it's really, really hard for a lot of people that live in our county. So we appreciate your support.
Okay, thank you. I see Eddie's hand is also up. Huh?
Thank you, Mayor. I do want to address this from the perspective of Councilmember Montano's question about diversity, equity, inclusion. I think the SVO is the elephant in the room when it comes to this issue. And as you all know, we have had a very public reckoning on this issue regarding a very unfortunate series of practices and incidents multiple times that have caused harm and contributed to racial divide within our community. First, I want to acknowledge that and to show an authentic commitment to our organization's change process when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I am the public policy director for my organization, and I can speak to what I am working on right now in terms of incorporating an equity lens in all of our lines of work and our public policy advocacy. But in order for this process to be authentic, we need for us to go through this process in a deliberate manner, in a way that uplifts all communities, and to partner with all of our chamber partners, including from those you have heard, the Hispanic Chamber, the Black Chamber, and other community groups that we historically have not reached out to. This is an ongoing process. If you would like to work with us, the SVO, to continue this, I'd like to certainly partner with you and to continue the dialogue. In the meantime, we are uplifting the Chamber Coalition and sharing our resources with other minority chambers of commerce in order to go through this. And this won't be a one-time sweep under the rug issue. This will be a change process that will be years in the making. And thank you for your time for this.
Thank you. Okay. And I see no other hands raised. Well, I see Dennis and Eddie, but you both spoke. And so I'm going to now look at my colleagues and Mayor Blankley.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to say, first of all, that I think all of us are, certainly speaking from Gilroy, we are absolutely promoting the wear your mask, social distance. I don't know how much harder we can hit that. We are participating in the ambassador program. We have people all over the city. Gilroy's got what the county's called a hotspot, and we are working on continual testing, getting vaccinations down here. It is all happening. So that's happening. The small business part of it, what I would like to point out or ask the chambers is, have you considered, and I'm sorry, Mark, that I haven't had this conversation with you separately, but I wasn't, anyway, small businesses, if you're just going to define them by the number of employees, not all small businesses have been closed. I mean, maybe the way to try to address this is just the ones that have been, I mean, you're trying to get assistance, so make sure that assistance is going to the small businesses that COVID has hit, because there are some businesses that are, not suffering, right? I'm a CPA, my CPA practice is not suffering, and yet I'm a small business. So rather than just say to all small businesses, it might be more efficient, or it might carry more weight to say the masking, social distancing, all those things we absolutely encourage and are promoting, and we get it. And then secondly, those businesses that have been closed, like the restaurants, the salons, I mean, those are the ones that have really hurt. Some are just 2 or 3 people construction things, and they've still been working. Landscapers, they're still working. It's the ones that aren't. So you might want to consider phrasing it that way. It might touch more people. Anyway, that's my comment.
It's a good point, Mayor. Thank you. We appreciate it. We'll take that to heart for sure.
Colleagues, any other questions or comments? Okay, so thank you to our guests. I'm going to close public testimony. The action that's requested of us is to continue the dialogue. And I believe based on the conversations and questions you're receiving, we have a curious composition that we'll want to dialogue. And I'm hopeful that as there are specific asks that you work through Andy, and that that could get funneled to us, and we'll be able to collaborate on those. So.
That'll be great. Thank you again for your time. We appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you. And then colleagues, before we close this item, any other comments? I know, Steve, you mentioned you had a question and that you were going to wait for comments. Would you like to share anything on?
Well, I was going to get a little bit in the weeds, but I would say our public health officer, I wouldn't call her restrictive. That's kind of pejorative when we're dealing with public health. I think she's certainly cautious, and I think she feels a great weight on her shoulders that we deal with this life and death matter very seriously.
I appreciate that, Steve. The comments tonight were not aimed at any sort of a personal attack on her by any means. We understand the difficult position that she's in. When we say restrictive, we certainly have, by that we mean while others are moving forward, we're staying behind. And we get it. It's a lot to have to weigh out, and she's under a lot of pressure. So we understand and appreciate that.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, thank you very much, all Mr. Peter Katz's of you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Okay, item number 5 is our planning collaborative presentation. And so, Andy, it might be good to give some context on the planning collaborative for several of our newest colleagues.
Sure, and I just want to make sure can you help me move over the planning collaborative folks and move back to attendees, the chamber folks as well, if you could, that would be great. Just to give you a little bit of context, since 2015, the Cities Association has been created a task force with the county to create a RHNA subregion. And Laurel Pravetti was actually was one of the members of that committee. I joined the committee after I was hired. We had members from Palo Alto, Sunnyvale, and some of those members are now gone. A member from Mountain View, and in 2018, 19, I have to think about it. It's all blurring together. In 2018, the board voted to form, instead of a RHNA subregion, decided to form planning collaborative, and the planning collaborative would have the way that we envision it, we would have a technical advisory committee, which is made up of your staff, and then when policy questions came, that would come to the policy committee of the Cities Association, but it also includes a vote of the county. And so at this time, all of our cities have opted to join, as well as the county. And most of these meetings, you will not see most of the meetings. Most of the meetings are held with your community development directors or other planning staff and housing staff. They've been meeting, well, they're going to give you an overview of how long they're meeting. But we're hoping that we will bring policy discussions to you probably likely every quarter. To make sure that that we're bringing you the best information that you can have, and you will receive this information, but you'll also receive it, and your councils will receive it from the staff. And so I'm really happy to introduce you to Josh Abrams, to Paul Penninger, and to Daisy. And Daisy, I don't know how to say your last name. Has Daisy been moved over too? And they are our consultants that are helping us. They're helping us create this planning collaborative. So take it away, guys.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to present to you. I'm Josh Abrams, and I've actually staffed 21 Elements, the sister collaborative, for the last 13 years. It's a pretty long time. It's the most meaningful professional project I've worked on. I love it. I really believe in it. I really believe we're doing good work for the cities and really helping with housing policy. So I don't mean to say that that's necessarily the model to go with, but I hope we can achieve great things with the Santa Clara County Planning Collaborative. As Andy said, if I can advance the slides, there's 3 of us that'll mostly be working on it. There's a couple of people that might join as necessary, but myself and Paul Penninger and Daisy Quinones. If you're going to remember 3 things about what the Planning Collaborative does, I would say the first is support excellent housing policy. We're always looking for opportunities where cities are interested in collaborating about housing policy, and we can make that easier. The second is we're laser focused on saving jurisdictions time and resources. We know everyone's really busy. We know staff is really busy. We know budgets are really tight. And we know there'll be no support for our existence if we don't find ways to make ourselves really useful. So we're always looking. That's like the biggest stress of my job. I'm always looking for opportunities to save jurisdictions time and resources. And then the third thing is respecting local autonomy. We're not advocates. While we definitely try and get good housing policy, we respect local control and local decision making. So if a city wants to pass a housing policy, if a couple of cities do, we can make it easier. We can write staff reports. We can do the background research. We can give sample ordinances. But if it doesn't work for a city, there'll never be any pressure from us to adopt a policy that doesn't work for your city. Here's a whole long list of things that we do. There's a the Cities Association, part of the Cities Association website, where we're collecting all our resources, regular meetings, producing data, a bunch of education tools, engaging with the state, with HCD, and helping understand new laws. But I want to actually just focus on a couple, because I think they're really good examples of where there's savings through collaboration. One of them is we'll probably produce for housing elements, we'll probably produce a sample newsletter where some sections will kind of be fixed describing what a housing element is, but then cities can easily swap out photos or background text or their own timeline for their own process. Again, respects local autonomy, makes it easier for cities to do their job, saves resources, and is a nice best practice. Or another example is we're working with ABAG to analyze all the housing needs for the entire county by city. This is a section that's required for the housing element. And if you were to hire a consultant to do it, that it's just a time-consuming thing to do. It would easily cost $20,000 to hire a consultant. But what we're doing is we're downloading all the data for all the cities, processing it all at once, and even having a computer write the first draft of the text about how the housing prices or rents have changed, what the racial or economic characteristics of the community is. Obviously, it doesn't get you across the finish line, but it gets you a whole lot further and can save a whole lot of resources. And then there's some other things that really can only happen through collaboration. Like we're planning on having HCD, the state, come down and do a tour of all the cities. Our experience is if the staff at the state know the local staff, housing element approvals is a lot easier. And if the state can understand the local conditions and the local challenges, they're just more sympathetic when cities come to get their housing elements approved. So again, that's in that way, that's a best practice, not necessarily something a required thing, but it'll make life easier for everyone. Or another one is we can help with we're planning or thinking about doing some multilingual or multiple language outreach. Sometimes it's a little expensive for cities to do on their own. And also a lot of times the networks for Spanish speakers or Vietnamese speakers cross city boundaries. So although in the end, we want to get everyone's city specific comments to the cities, sometimes it makes sense to collaborate on things like that, where we can just go further if we collaborate. That's it. I could talk all day, honestly, about like opportunities where I see to go further or save money, but I don't want to take too much time. Paul's going to jump in, and I'm totally happy to answer questions if there are any. Paul, do you want to?
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Paul Penninger, Baird and Driscoll, really be thrilled to be talking to you this evening. I have my espresso, so hopefully I won't talk too fast. I wanted to just pick up on what Josh was saying, is that we're really looking for ways to do excellent housing policy for local jurisdictions, to save time and resources, and to respond to local conditions and local planning and land use realities. And fortunately, all of the jurisdictions in Santa Clara County, all of the cities plus the county, did agree to contribute to and to join the planning collaborative. And so we have a baseline of $160,000 in local funding. It ranges from anywhere from $6,500 to $18,000, depending on the size of the jurisdiction, but that's how much each of the cities contributed. And so we have this $160,000 to fund our base collaboration. And then on top of that, and in recognition of the challenges that this housing element update round are going to bring to local communities, ABAG is also providing funding through the Regional Early Action Assistance Program in the amount of $615,000 over the next 3 years. So we've been talking to your staff. We've been talking to planning staff and housing staff since September, and really trying to refine the most important priorities for our work plan for the collaborative over the next 2 years in particular, and really have encouraged staff to sort of think big, think about all of the positive things that can come out of collaboration, and also in light of the extraordinary fiscal situation that communities face right now with COVID, what's the best use for this funding? So next slide, please. So the ideas that we've talked about with staff are on your screen. Many of them will be familiar to you. Things like promoting accessory dwelling units, promoting local preferences policies in affordable housing, local housing trust funds, countywide community land trust, different kinds of ideas like that around housing policy. We presented all of these ideas and more to the Planning Collaborative in January and asked them to go through a ranking exercise. So building on all of the sort of one-on-one interviews and key stakeholder interviews that we've been doing, we said, what are the most important items that you would like us to focus on in our work plan for the next 2 years? And the results are on the next slide. So this is what came out of that ranking. Overwhelmingly, city and county staff said that the most important single thing that they would really like us to focus on are resources, technical analysis, one-on-one meetings, really getting our, rolling up our sleeves and getting into your site's inventory and analysis, understanding, what sites you have to meet your RHNA as local jurisdictions, and doing it in a way that's complementary to the work that your housing element consultants are going to be doing. Also, shared outreach and community engagement. Staff are really concerned about making sure that all sorts of voices from across the community are being heard in this housing element update round, and that we're doing outreach and community engagement in a way which is going to bring in the maximum number of community voices and a diverse range of voices. Third, affirmatively furthering fair housing. As many of you may know, a law was passed in California that requires local jurisdictions to consider affirmatively furthering fair housing when they're thinking about updating their housing elements, not just when they're thinking about it, when they're updating their housing elements. So what that means in practice is that when you're doing programs or policies or thinking about where your housing site should go, you have to think about that in the context of equity. So are the sites near services? Are they near jobs? Are they near transit? What are the environmental conditions of the sites? What kinds of programs can you put in place to encourage socioeconomic and racial diversity in your community, and in recognition of proactive strategies to affirmatively further fair housing? This kind of picks up a little bit on the conversation you were just having. And then finally, the fourth most important priority that local jurisdictions identified through the collaborative, through the members of the collaborative, and I should say we have about 70 people signed up on the Google list, and on any given meeting, we get between 40 and 50 people. So attendance has been robust. Seems like staff are getting a lot out of it. We usually have every single jurisdiction represented, and most contribute pretty actively. So it's been so far it's been a pretty good interactive collaborative or collaboration. The fourth priority is local preferences. And what that means is, is it possible for a community, as a condition of approving a project or as a condition of providing funding or financing or donating land to an affordable housing development, to require that that preferences be given to applicants to the housing who are either local residents or employees? And that's very tricky, as I'm sure all of you know from a fair housing perspective. But there are ways to do it. There's, if you kind of think about it in the context of strategies to prevent displacement of longtime residents. And if you show that there's a nexus between the need for local preferences and an anti-displacement strategy, you can do it. But what we've been asked to do by staff is to really look at what are the feasible ways of going about structuring the local preferences ordinance in Santa Clara County communities. So those are within the budget that we have, those were the top 4 priorities that kind of rose to the top that we're really asking for your feedback on. There are many others. And what I want to say about these others that are ranked 5 through 12 is that we're still going to work on all of these to the extent that staff and you ask us to do research as part of the base collaboration, but we won't spend nearly as much time or resources or as effort as we will be on sites inventory, shared outreach, affirmatively furthering fair housing, and local preferences. So next slide, please.
Paul, I just want to add one more context. This was with the caveat, with the understanding that we were going to put a lot of our resources into helping cities get their housing element adopted and certified. So that was taken for granted. That's why that's not on there so much. But definitely this next year that'll be.
Yeah, that's great. I take it for granted that that's the context. But of course, all of this in the context of making sure that you have excellence, locally supported, certifiable housing elements. That's the goal. So the next slide, please. So these were as I mentioned before, these were the priorities that kind of rose to the top in all of our discussions with staff and in the prioritization exercise that we did at the last planning collaborative meeting. We wanted to, most importantly, this evening, bring these before you, get your comments on these work plan priorities, and then ask you if there are other priorities that you'd like us to consider. And so that's the most important discussion item. And then I think the next slide, just building on that, is there also potentially support in the city's association for supporting a kind of big tent housing organization like the Home for All organization in San Mateo County, which brings together employers, nonprofit organizations, housing advocates, foundations, and most importantly, the community, community stakeholders, people who aren't necessarily already in the housing policy arena, to talk about housing and to be explicitly kind of a pro-housing organization. This is something that could link back to the community engagement and outreach support that we've been asked to look at, but it could also be something different that comes out of our work on behalf of the collaborative. So Josh and I wanted to bring this before you and see what your thoughts were about that, if there was support amongst this group for talking more about what it would look like to create a Home for All style organization for Santa Clara County and what next steps might be on that. So I think maybe the way to go is to go back to the previous slide and just make sure that people have these 4 priorities up in front of them. And Andy, with that, I think discussion.
I wanted to ask something. I don't know if we can see if I can figure out a way here to see more people. I was wondering from the members here, who knows what Home for All is? Because I just thought we might need to give them just a little synopsis of what Home for All is. The Cities Association, we did take up the topic of a Home for All in 2018 at our May general meeting. And it was there was a lot of interest at that time in 2018. But maybe we should let everybody know what that is. Home for All is in a little more detail if there is a need to do that.
And unfortunately, if anyone would like more information about that, the best way for us, since we can't see everyone's face right now, is just to raise your hand. So.
Yeah, and I can see everyone. I've put it on another screen.
So
okay.
Member Moore of Cupertino.
Okay. Mariko, do you just want us to give a little more Home for All?
If you could.
Josh, would you prefer to give a little more about Home for All, or do you want me to try?
I'll start and then anyone can jump in. I often think of Home for All as the sister to 21 Elements. 21 Elements works more with the staff level, we really aid staff. Home for All works a lot with decision makers and is a much bigger tent. It has employers and educational institutions and labor people in there. So it's a much bigger housing tent. And it's also a little more a voice where people can, while 21 Elements, while the collaborative will always take a very neutral position, obviously trying to help cities get more housing, but we'll always caveat things like accessory dwelling units are great if they work in your community or something that we'll try not to put pressure on cities. Home for All is a little more comfortable with an advocacy voice. Obviously, it's controlled by the city, so it's a pro-city advocacy voice, but it's a little more stronger of a pro-housing voice, while the planning collaborative is a little more in the weeds, assisting staff, helping getting their job done. I find it really helpful to have that voice out there and to bring in those other players. I think it's a nice, in San Mateo County, it's a nice addition.
I would just add that the piece that was in 2018 when we talked about this, the piece that we found intriguing about it was they did community conversations to bring people together to try to find some commonality and some unified voice around housing, where previously people had been more polarized on different topics, and also some of the other components that have come out of Home for All is they have an online ADU website, and there's on the Home for All website you can go on and you can find everything you need to know about ADUs in San Mateo County. And we could have a calculator, like that. You can figure out how much it would cost to build in your community. You find all the regulations. Some communities have plans available. But that's the kind of thing. And you could go, their website is Home for All. So HOME for, I think it's FOR, all, and then S as in Sam, M as in Mary, and C as in cat. So San Mateo County, that is their website. I think it's .com. But you could have a look at that later, and it is also something that maybe our housing and unhoused committee might want to look at as well. I'll leave it. I'm done now.
Councilmember Moore.
Okay, thank you. I would like to have it clarified if the ADUs count towards very low or low income for our housing element. And just to mention for Cupertino, our RENA numbers originally were 6223, up from 1,064. We actually have currently entitled 3,457 units not being built. And our numbers got backed down to around 4,500 units. And of those, very low income and low income, we have 41% need to be built in those categories, for a total of about 1,800 units. And just for reference, in Cupertino, we use some Measure A funding and some other resources to build the veranda, 19 units, average cost almost $800,000 a piece. So when we're being tasked with 1,845 units of very low and low income, this has a huge price tag. We're talking, over $1 billion. It's going to be big. So any advice you have, I know you're talking about siting, we could certainly use. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect example of where the planning collaborative can help. In order to count the ADUs as affordable, you have to cite some type of evidence that they're likely to be affordable. So we've been working with UC Berkeley to do a statewide study about affordability for ADUs with because the Santa Clara collaborative put in money. We're heavily oversampling Santa Clara County. So we just got 800 results so far. We're trying to decide whether or not to go out to try and get more, but we're going to come back with a report about what affordability assumptions you can make for ADUs. You'll definitely be able to count a percentage of them as very low income and a percentage of them as low. Some realistically probably are rented at moderate or above moderate. So they'll be spread out between those four categories based on what we learned in the study. And then I think just without going into too much in depth into RENA, so ADUs will count for affordability levels for the housing element. And then also, you don't actually have to provide funding for all those units. You just have the zone that if a nonprofit developer wanted to build it, they would be able to build it. So dense zoning also counts, meeting your affordable housing needs for housing element purposes.
Mayor Fleiker?
Thank you. And Paul and Josh, thanks for being here. Thanks for the presentation. I was looking forward to this discussion because I think at least Josh attended the Los Altos City Council meeting where we got an update with our staff walking us through the housing element update process. And they also talked about the cost associated with a third-party consultant helping us with that process. And as I was listening to the presentation and hearing how much it would cost, the Planning Collaborative came to mind immediately, because of course I'm wondering how can the Planning Collaborative help us to cut into this cost? Because as you know, it's a couple $100,000 that's being quoted for the housing element update consultant. And so what I would really appreciate, and I know you do a lot of work behind the scenes and you work directly with staff, and so a lot of your work may not be visible or tangible work product that you can point to. But in my mind, what ideally I would appreciate is, let's say, for example, there are 10 things we need to get done to do our housing element update. Are there things the Planning Collaborative can take off the plate of the third-party consultant so we don't have to include that in the scope of work and the cost of a third-party consultant? So that's what I would really appreciate hearing from your team.
Great question. And we prepared, yes, totally. We prepared a sample RFP that some of your staff are using that actually strikes out and says, don't charge for this item because the Planning Collaborative is providing it. Have this as an optional item only in case like you need it, but we're planning on getting it. So some of the real specifics there are the housing needs and data background section. That's a big savings. Another one where all cities there's a couple of spots where you need to compare your policies, your fees, your processing time to your neighbors. And rather than city one, call city two, there's a lot of that, except we'll just do one survey and give it out, write up the results about processing time and fees. So that's the governmental constraints. Hopefully we'll be able to save some time there. The non-governmental constraints is another section where a lot of the non-governmental constraints, like how the cost of housing affects how the cost of land and the cost of labor affects the ability to build housing, how the availability of capital affects it. All those things are similar throughout the county, at least close enough that if we write some material, it'll be much easier to adapt it than starting fresh. So that's another example. Outreach is another one where in San Mateo County, we're actually having housing element kickoff meetings where in the north part of the county, we'll have 4 cities all together for one meetings, and then we'll have breakout rooms for each city, and then we'll all come back together. It'll both build the sense of like, we're all in it together, which hopefully will feel comforting. And also just cross that off the scope. Like you've done a significant portion of your outreach. In San Mateo County, we're also doing a lot of these we haven't fully decided yet for Santa Clara County, but in San Mateo County, we're doing one website for any cities that want it with a homepage, some background information, and then each city can have its own subpage in either to get feedback or provide information. Some cities will still choose to do it on their own city's page, which is totally fine. We can just direct people to that. But if cities were planning on having an outside web page, again, it's probably would have cost $5,000 to have a web page. So it's a savings there. I mean, I want to also be realistic. It's going to be hard to get housing elements certified. It's going to be a lot of work, and it's going to be expensive. I mean, $500,000 is a reasonable estimate for cities, and our collaborative budget 10 or even with the $10,000 per city, or even with the ABAG money, 15, 20,000, we'll be able to help for sure. But like 500,000, our budget, have modest expectations. What I like to say is like, whatever you put into the planning collaborative, I want you to think like that was an awesome investment. But I also don't want to promise miracles. Like there's still going to be hard work. You're still going to have to put local resources in, and hopefully we'll try really hard to make it easier and cost less, and you can do it better. But it's, there's only so much we can do.
I want to say just real quick on that I haven't always worked for Baird and Driscoll. I used to work for another firm, and I did a housing element update in San Mateo County where I used materials from the 21 Elements organization to update the needs assessment, the government constraints, and other sections in the housing element for South San Francisco with the community. And it did save the city a lot of time and a lot of resources, and it saves, frankly, us as their consultants, a lot of staff time and resources. So I think that there are actually more ways that we can work together to save resources and to make sure that we're leveraging the collaboration more effectively. We know that cities are under a lot of fiscal constraints right now. And so, as Josh said before, we're laser focused on figuring out ways to make it clear to you all of the ways that you can save money, but including in the scope of work that is being presented for your consultants and consultants for the housing element, which I think was $500,000, right?
It was. I was hoping maybe you could help with 100,000 of the scope. But
Right. Mayor Flygore, there's one more thing I wanted to add too. So we're meeting, I think, next week with Campbell to go over their sites inventory before they go out to RFPs. Because one thing that sometimes happens is cities don't know how hard it is, don't know how many sites they'll have to rezone, don't know what's in their inventory now, and they can't give that guidance to consultants. So consultants, they just want to be cautious. They'll bid really high because they don't know how many sites that need to be rezoned. So they'll just cover themselves and bid high. By meeting ahead of time, doing a quick scan of the sites and understanding what's there now and how much might need to be rezoned, you'll get lower bids. And there's some things like that where you might not even know we met with staff. Like maybe staff will remember to tell you, but maybe they won't. And you won't even see it because you'll still get the bid, and maybe the bid will be 350,000 as opposed to 400,000 because we've identified now like it's going to be 500 sites that have to be rezoned or whatever it is. So you'll get better bids, and it's a better practice and all around. But we've always made the decision to not try and call attention to us, to let cities take the spotlight and other things like that. So there's some things too where we'll, when we come to you, when we do quarterly or annually reports, we'll highlight those things. But a lot of those will be in the background when we're not intentionally laying out our accomplishments.
Right. And just a final point on that, those better practices that you mentioned, like meeting ahead of time to help with the site inventory before you actually go out would reduce the bid estimate. Things like that I think would be appreciated too. And I'm sure you're doing it behind the scenes where if there are things you can do or if there are things the cities could do to reduce that amount, those things are, as you know, much appreciated.
Right. And we've offered any cities when they get a bid to send it to us afterwards, and we'll cross off any items that we'll do. So there's kind of a final check there.
And I think part of it's just, staff are just now, I don't want to say just now, staff are getting very comfortable reaching out to us and asking for help on a variety of items. So, I've had at least 2 calls with at least 2 different cities every day this week, Santa Clara County jurisdictions on a whole range of different items, which is great because it means that, they're starting to see that, oh, we are a resource, we can be of help. And, we can also connect them to what other cities are doing because we might be that clearinghouse of information. They may not even know that some other jurisdiction is working on something similar.
Right. Or we could go on all day. The House.
Real quick.
Yeah, sorry.
I did notice that Mayor Du Bois had a question, but he put his hand down. So I want to make sure I don't forget that. And then I do want to see if anyone from the public does want to speak. Mayor?
Yeah, I was going to save time, but thanks for the update. I think these resources are great. One quick question is, are these planning collaborative meetings public or are they or not?
We like to create a safe space for staff to ask honest questions and discuss hard things. So we've tried to keep them as just staff.
Okay.
It's not a hard and fast policy, but that's what we aim for.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah. So I think the site inventory is an important first step. And I just wanted to echo the comments of Ms. Moore from Cupertino that we have a lot of concerns about really what's the unfunded mandate to create a lot of the low income housing. In Palo Alto, our cycle 6 is about 3 times what we had in cycle 5. So it's going from 2,000 units to 6,000 units, where we have 26,000 housing units in the city. And so we have real concern about the feasibility of achieving those targets, particularly of the low income. And I think, we have some interest in actually doing kind of a feasibility study of what it would take to build that in an 8-year cycle. And again, I think it's just kind of a huge amount of money. And with the new state laws, there's some real repercussions if you don't hit those targets. So I think if it falls in your purview, I think one thing we'd be really interested in is advocating for more funding for below market rate housing from the state. And also just making sure that these demand models are accurate. There's been some concern about double counting certain factors. And, if these totals in aggregate are too large and basically we can't afford to hit these low income targets, then, there's some real repercussions for cities. And then the last thing I just wanted to say is that Palo Alto recently passed a resolution opposing state override of local control. And I think there's been over 50 cities that have done that so far. So I'd be happy to share that if anybody else is interested. Thanks.
And then I do want to make sure anyone in our attendee list, anyone in the public who would like to speak on this can do so. Okay, I see no hands raised. So colleagues, I bring this back to us. There was no specific ask. It was just an update and an introduction to new members. But if there's any last comments before we move to the next agenda item. Yes, Councilmember Moore.
Thank you. And I really appreciate the comments I just heard. Because our numbers were so high initially, and I have not heard yet about the slight reduction that we had, one of the messages that we were getting was that they might have to actually rezone commercial areas for residential in order to accommodate them. Cupertino is a fairly small city. If they then do that, you're not going to have the jobs prediction that they're expecting because you've had to take your commercial areas, your office areas, and turn them into housing. So those jobs aren't going to materialize. And then it also gets into the city's ability to zone for retail and things that could help with the city's budget and whatnot. It kind of removes planning entirely. So, and I certainly appreciate the fact that there are, the mention that there are repercussions if we do not have these, the very low and low income housing built. Cupertino has the Valco SB 35 project. And so there are some very severe penalties. And as I've said in other places, that particular project actually worsens the housing shortage. So if you dig into the project, you'll see it has too much office for the amount of housing. So it uses a housing law to worsen the housing shortage. So you might have something happen that is beyond your control that makes matters worse for the region. Thank you.
And Carmen did ask, what are those repercussions? And so Josh and Paul, do you want to briefly speak about what are the repercussions that were mentioned?
Paul, do you want to, or should I?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's the legislature's been passing a lot of laws, and they're very concerned about the housing crisis in California, and where that lands is in the realm of local communities' land use and zoning controls. So I think, not to diminish anything that the council members just said, that the repercussions may not be as scary as folks think. And we can actually help to ameliorate some of those concerns. But in essence, what they come down to is the state, through a variety of different mechanisms, overriding local land use and planning and policy controls. But you have the opportunity through your housing elements, through proactive housing planning, to avoid those repercussions and to do stuff that's actually consistent with your community's vision and values and goals. And so that's what we hope to do. Josh said before, we're not here to, substitute our views for what you think is the right policy for your cities. We're just here to help you get the right policies and programs that we think that the state will certify in your housing element, and that will get you to actually achieving the housing policy goals in a way that's consistent with your community's values. Josh, do you want to say?
Yeah, I mean, just to name, it's in particular, it's SB 35 is one of the big sticks. If cities don't build enough housing, they'll lose some rights to deny housing projects.
Yeah, there's different things like that. There's a law that was just passed that said that cities can't require one-for-one replacement of lost replacement parking for surface parking in front of religious institutions. I know Councilmember Moore, I did Cupertino's 4th round housing element update. So I happen to know some of your former underutilized opportunity sites, and one of them was a church with a lot of service parking. So I think there's some things like that where there might be, consequences for parking replacement or for land use, but it's not, the repercussions may not be as severe as folks are fearing.
Thank you. And Councilmember Moore. And then if I see no other questions, I'm actually going to ask Councilmember Moore to close us.
Thank you. I just want to mention the specifics about the project and really defend my remarks. The Valco project has 1.81 million square feet of office. It will generate about 7,400 employees. It has 400,000 square feet of retail, and for the residential units, I know it's called a housing project, but it has 2,402 residential units, half of which will be affordable to people making less than about $80,000. And there's been a serious question about whether or not the office employees would even qualify for those units. So I think realistically, we're looking at 1,201 units for 7,400 potential employees. And that's how we arrive at the statement. And no one's questioning that they used a housing law to worsen the housing shortage. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Josh and Paul, and for joining us. As you can see, there's a lot of interest, and housing is one of our strategic priorities for the year. And so we'll work with Andy to bring you back when it's a good time to provide another update.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. Item number 6, discussion regarding Saturday county meetings. I know Mayor Blankley had mentioned the Saturday calls. Andy, do you want to give a little bit of context?
Sure. As you know, after the pandemic began last year, the Cities Association, we utilized sending a mayor's letter to the county asking, thanking them for their role in shelter in place, but also asking them for more testing, and also, saying that we wanted to be supportive and helpful. And so Supervisor Chavez, then board president, and Supervisor Simitian invited the mayors to Saturday calls, of which I think most of you are attending or have attended. And on the Saturday calls, first it was just the mayors, and then toward the end of last year, they opened it up and invited another council member to attend as well. When we had the mayors attend last year, it turned out that it provided no issues for the Cities Association regarding the Brown Act in case something did come up, because we did not have a majority of the mayors were not on the board of the Cities Association. But as all the councils reorganized, we noticed that we had several Brown Act issues, and mind you that the conversations differ and the agendas differ on the Saturday calls, but we are concerned of several topics. that could come up. And it's not only an issue just as the board in general, but it's also an issue for the executive board. And so the executive board quorum for them is four. And so we do have four members of our executive board that attend the Saturday call. And so now we're rotating so that one is not attending. But we now have realized that it took a while to figure out who the appointees were for the Cities Association, but we have between 10 and 11 people that are attending, which would make a quorum for the Cities Association. Shantine, before she withdrew from representing us, had set up had sent a memo, a letter to me regarding, and her suggestion was that we have several options to just set up a rotation so that we make sure people sign up, so that we know who's attending, so that we can make sure that that if an issue comes up, that we do not violate the Brown Act. And then Kat Wellman is here, and I'm going to let Kat also just give her suggestions. I did show her one of the agendas. I mean, it isn't always a problem, but it could be a problem.
Yes, it was very interesting because this came up in front of the executive board meeting last Friday, I think it was. And the question was, well, you know, is it really subject matter jurisdiction issues that are being discussed? And I looked at the Saturday agenda because I asked Andy to send it to me. And sure enough, one of the things that was being provided to the people who were actually calling in was information on homelessness. And I had already looked at the Cities Association website and saw that homelessness, it was very important to the Cities Association. What I didn't know last Friday, but I understand now, is that it was the Cities Association that actually started these phone calls. So it's very important that you be able to follow, be able to continue to do this without violating the Brown Act. And that means that you need to make sure that you don't have a majority or a quorum of either the Cities Association or the Executive Board when you're speaking to the county representative, or else it needs to be agendized properly. Okay. And it would be open to the public, which I don't think is what everybody wants to do. So I think that either coming up with a rotation system or something along those lines would probably be the best way to do it. And Andy actually knows a little bit more about who's on it and who's not, and might be able to give a better suggestion. But I think it is something that everybody needs to be very cognizant of.
Thank you. And I do want to make sure I open it up for questions, but Steve, from the county perspective, do you have any questions or comments that you'd like to share with us?
I'm sorry this is a problem because we think the involvement of the mayors, the council members, and the city managers is providing a lot of rich feedback for county staff. So I hope this gets worked out satisfactorily and that rotations or whatever solve the quorum issue. I mean, the problem get resolved, because we need the feedback. That's really all I have to share.
Thank you. So I opened it up. Any questions first? Okay, and then so Andy, oh yes, I do see questions. So Carmen and then Tom.
Thank you, Mario. So what comes to my mind are also other agencies that we're involved in. For example, I serve on the VTA, and I'm aware that there are other members here on the Cities Association that serve on that group. So how does that play out? Is that so I guess my question to Kat, our legal counsel, is that also included, not just the ambassador meetings on Saturdays?
Anytime there is a quorum of people from the Cities Association that are meeting at another public setting, where there's a possibility where you're going to be deliberating or discussing issues that are part of the jurisdiction of the Cities Association, you would have a problem. And I can't speak to your other organization that you're speaking, that you're talking about. But it appears that there is a problem with these Saturday calls. And I just wanted to, I'm sorry, Carmen, I just want to go back to what Steve had said. There's no reason why there can't be a representative from the city. It just can't be if there's a quorum problem and you're rotating, it just needs to be somebody who's not on the board, whether that, can be a city manager or it can be a different council member. So there are ways of resolving the issue without removing the cities from being able to hear the important information and actually deliberate.
Andy, it would be helpful for us to know how many at the last meeting, I believe we hit quorum. So how many are actually in attendance on Saturday calls? Are we talking about one? Are we two? What's the universe?
Okay, I've got to pull up the,
Okay, and whilst you
if
pull
there's
that
another
up,
question, why don't you go ahead for that and then I'll pull this up.
and then I believe that, I'm sorry, the other question, Tom?
Yeah, two questions really. So, the League of Cities seems very similar to Cities Association in that it's funded by cities, it has city council members on its board, but it's not a Brown Acted body. They choose to follow the Brown Act, but they're not a Brown Acted body. And so, kind of why is this even an issue? It's kind of my first question. And then the second question is, what is the jurisdiction of the Cities Association? It seems so broad that, when would this not be an issue?
Good question. I can answer the first part with regard to the League of Cities, and my other colleagues can as well. We prevent that by having them all publicly noticed when we meet. And so all of our meetings, we may not get people from the public, but all of our meetings are publicly noticed and are available.
But the League says specifically that it's not a Brown Acted body.
The League's money doesn't derive either from, one of the things I believe is where you get your income from, and the League actually doesn't get most of its income from cities. It gets it from another source. But their board isn't made up of a group that's regularly going to get together. You're more likely, we are a body, and it is more likely that you're all going to be together at some point.
Yeah, I don't think where your fees come from make you a Brown Acted body either, but I just think we should be clear on does this really apply?
Okay, would you like me to respond? I'm
Sure.
happy to respond. Anytime you have a body that's been created by formal action of a legislative body, which every single one of your cities would have acted in order to create the Cities Association, you are subject to the Brown Act. And that is where the directive comes from.
I'm not sure that ever
and you're absolutely, and you have bylaws. It's the Cities Association has been in existence for 30 years. You have bylaws that very specifically lay out the fact that you are subject to the Brown Act. And I agree with you. It's very, very frustrating when you have such broad interests with all the cities that there's very few topics that are not going to be subject matter jurisdictions, because as you meet, you have more and more issues that you want to become involved in and you want to take action on. And it's sort of like you're a mayor and you know that being subject to the Brown Act in the city, just about everything that you have to deal with in the city is going to be subject to the Brown Act. It's subject matter jurisdiction. So you're right. It's very, very broad. And it requires you to really be on your toes. And really the only problem is if you have a quorum. For you, it would be, in your city, it would be the quorum of city council members. For the Cities Association, it would be a quorum of that body. For the executive board, it would be a quorum of the executive board. So you're right, it is hard, it is difficult, but I don't think in this particular case, when you have other people who are actually attending the county calls, who are not on either the boards, or either the executive board or the Cities Association board, they can attend. I don't think it's an insurmountable problem. I think it should be very easy to kind of figure out either a rotation system, if we have everybody on the board really wanting to attend, and then make sure you have alternates in your city that will do it in your place.
So just to be clear, I mean, the county calls, I think, started last April, where the county health official was setting up calls with all the mayors, which was similar. It was a call-in. So this has been going on for quite a while. I mean, I think one alternative we should discuss is whether we should exclude this from the jurisdiction of the Cities Association. I mean, I would prefer to be talking to the county and the county health officer about COVID vaccines and COVID testing. And so I wonder if we should even think about flipping it around, where that might be the primary body on this topic. So I'll just throw that out there.
And other questions? Out of curiosity, I know, just show of hands, how many, we know with the executive committee that there 4 has reached the quorum, and so we're switching. How many of us on this call right now actually attend the Saturday meetings? So
I found my list too.
Oh, you found your list. So how?
Yeah. So also, the other is at Mountain View. While Margaret is here, the alternate for Mountain View on the board is Ellen. And so there we have a quorum. So we have to look at, when I look at it, I have to look at either the member or the alternate. So Gilroy, Los Altos, Los Gatos, Milpitas, Montesarina, Morgan Hill, Mountain View, Palo Alto, Saratoga, and Sunnyvale. Those are the cities that I have listed as the quorum issue. And then the executive board, we have 4, Los Gatos, Morgan Hill, Sunnyvale, and Los Altos, and they're rotating. So.
Okay, so we have several options. One is a rotation, which we seem to think is the simplest. One is we ask the county to make it a public call, but I don't think that's something that anyone would like. The third is, as Mayor Du Bois said, is that this no longer be a cities association, and then we ask the county to organize it on their own. So comments?
Well, I think what I said was something different, which would be that the Cities Association doesn't talk about COVID vaccines and COVID testing, so that it's not under the City Association jurisdiction.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yep.
Mayor Clay?
Yeah, so I understand that seems simple. That being said, there's often requests that come from the county back to this organization to sign letters and all that are part of that discussion. So it's not just, yeah, we might not be able to talk about it here. That being said, or if that was proposed, there are things that, whether or not it's, transportation, COVID, all the possible things that would create, ultimately, I think what this organization was there for is advocating on any topic from a county standpoint. So I do think that that's difficult. So I don't see that that's viable. I question, Andy, so you said 4 from the executive board. How many from the full board? How many cities?
We have a possibility of 10.
10. So it's conceivably it's rotating amongst the other 6.
Yeah.
So we have 4 and then we have 6, and if we had to do rotation, and I do think that makes more sense to some degree. Although it's a question of how many of us are actually showing up on a weekly basis, and whether or not we send our city managers there in our stead. So just my 2 cents.
Mayor Blankley?
Yeah, okay. Since these Saturday morning meetings are every Saturday, and this group meets only once a month. If I wanted to keep going to the Saturday morning meetings, could I just not come to Cities Association next month and be clear for another 2 months? No.
No, you're a board member. So your attendance at the board really does not reflect.
Doesn't matter.
No.
Ugh, okay.
So the other question is, what is the harm and what is the fix? These are really information meetings to disseminate information on, again, vaccines and testing in a national health emergency. If somebody were to complain about a Brown Act violation, I think the fix would be making that information public, which we are anyways. So again, what is the real harm that is occurring here?
I'm assuming you want me to answer this.
Yeah, sure.
I don't think you ever want to knowingly violate the Brown Act and do it intentionally. Certain violations of the Brown Act are actually designated as misdemeanors. You can actually have the grand jury come after you. You can actually have the district attorney come after you. And it's not like see, usually the Brown Act fixes that you're talking about are things that the cities association is doing in their own meetings. They're not something that is being done outside. So the fix would be in your own meeting. For instance, if there was something that happened where you took action on an item that was not agendized, for instance, in open session, like tonight, for instance, and somebody called us on it and said that there was a Brown Act violation because you took action and it wasn't agendized, you could fix that at the next meeting. But there isn't any way of fixing it if it's not your meeting, it's not agendized, and it's not a matter of just providing information to the public. So I don't think that that's a viable solution.
But I'm saying there aren't decisions occurring at these meetings. They're disseminating information, right? So
Well,
what other fix would there be?
No, well, I actually, just early this year, one of the key issues that was talked about was advocacy for more transparency in vaccines. And immediately after one of our Saturday calls, Cities Association was asked to send a letter and co-sign to the governor. So there are actions that come from the Saturday calls. Mayor Fleiker?
I just want to weigh into and follow up on what Mayor Klein said. I love going to these meetings. I learn a lot, and I think it's a very important meeting. And when I am available, I wish I could go to all the meetings. But I do think the rotation is the best of the three solutions. And just so everybody understands, and I want to make sure I understand, if we were to move to this rotation, and of the 10, I think there's some alternates, it would mean that each of the groups, so there are two groups, you have the 6 and the 4, each group would still get to go to 2 meetings per month, correct? Because you would do 6-4, 6-4, you'd alternate the Saturdays, so the same 10 aren't going to the same meeting. Like how,
Yeah.
so let me ask.
Yeah, I think that Auden and I'll have Auden do a little spreadsheet and we'll work it out. But I think what's important to note is that it just means that you can't go or your alternate can't go on that day, but you can still send your city manager or someone else from your council.
Right, but I'm talking about the personal experience. It's not that you're, and I love that you made that point, Andy, because your city won't miss out because you can send an alternate or have your city manager.
Right.
But I'm more referring to the personal experience where I would love to go to all the meetings if I'm available. And I think I'm hearing that from others as well, because it's a very helpful and informative meeting. But I'm saying if we move to the rotation, what we're really looking at, and I'm speaking for myself, instead of going to 4 meetings per month, it would be reduced to 2, but I would still have an opportunity to go twice a month if I'm understanding correctly, if I choose to. Like, how would you structure the 6-4? Maybe that would help. Because when I heard the 6-4, I was thinking, oh, so you'd alternate. You know, the 6 group goes every other week, and then the 4 group would go the other 2 Saturdays.
You know, what might be helpful is if this is the route, the least of the evil that the group decides, that we just develop a schedule. It could be something as, again, I don't want to overcomplicate this. The executive committee, we found out we were breaking quorum, and so we just took turns. And if we just had a Google spreadsheet of who can, and you're assigned a date, and we just manage it amongst
We can just do it alphabetically by city, and I mean, it doesn't have to be that difficult. And I'll just make a spreadsheet and we'll send it around if that is your wish.
And the point I was trying to make is we would still have opportunities to go, not every Saturday as we've been doing, but we will still get to attend some meetings per month.
Absolutely, absolutely. Councilmember Moore?
All right, thank you. I didn't hear Cupertino mentioned on either of those lists, and since I'm here as an alternate, I want to make sure that Cupertino gets to attend. So I am mindful of that, and I want to know why we weren't on the list.
Oh, you're not on the list because Darcy is attending. And you and Liang are the board and the alternate members. So it's just when the board member or the alternate attend that create a quorum of our body. So because your mayor is attending, that's why it's not an issue.
Okay, and if he decides that he doesn't want to attend, and either Liang or myself are available and want to, then we're a problem.
Then you need to let us know so that we can add you into the spreadsheet.
Okay. Okay. I'm not sure how that would work, but okay. Thanks.
Mayor Du Bois?
Yeah, so just to clarify again, what I was suggesting in response to Larry, it wasn't to be really broad, it was to be very narrow, that the city's association will not take up as a topic for the next couple of months, health vaccines, COVID testing, the things that the county health officer is talking about on Saturdays, not to be all topics. And again, this is an emergency, it's emergency period. We have a very specific topic that we would exclude, and the cities can just deal with directly with the county. That's what I was proposing.
Mariko?
Yes.
So that would mean that I would have to step off of the COVID vaccine distribution committee with the county then. And I represent the cities on that committee.
And before I go to you, Councilmember Moore, I want to ask Mr. Preminger, if something like that where we said that Cities Association would not take this up as a matter, how would that work given that the whole purpose was created for this conversation?
Well, the issues that we're discussing and that we'll talk about Saturday, we'll probably hear something, maybe a bombshell from the governor tomorrow that we'll talk about Saturday, having to do with vaccines and all that. The calls allow for late breaking news on the most important issues of dealing with the COVID problem. So I think to try to restrict what we talk about would be to take away the heart and soul of the need for the meeting.
Okay. Any other questions? Any comments? So we're at 8:52. I'm looking for resolution. Again, there's 3 options that have been presented. I understand none of these are 100% ideal. Welcome to our life. But I do want some resolution before we go into Saturday's call. Yes, Councilmember Maka, you had your hand up.
I did. So just for background, I have been recently elected. I have never been a politician before. I don't know how I got roped into this, so this is my first meeting here. And I'd like to know if I were to devote my time and energy into this channel, what type of mission statement do you guys have? What type of visions do you have?
That's a great question. And what I think might be more appropriate is if Andy, if you'd be willing to share our orientation video.
Oh, yes. I will. I do. Yep. I will send that their way.
Thank you. So again, I'd like for us to get a simple solution. I don't want to overcomplicate this. This Saturday, I have volunteered. I will not attend Saturday's call. I'm setting my city manager. And so we are asking for one more person to volunteer for Saturday. And yes, Councilmember Abikoga.
Thank you. I guess I didn't say anything because I'm no longer on the calls, but having been one of the members who helped start the calls, I think it's best to try to allow for as much range of discussion at the meetings, at the Saturday calls as possible. We have talked about, other than testing and vaccines, we've talked about actually the Chamber of Commerce, how to help businesses. We've talked about mental health, providers, the mobile response team. So it's really been great in that sense. I think it's one of the best meetings or calls that I've been on, where as a city, it's really in terms of city-county relationship. So I would suggest, yes, it's great. And I think I went to every single meeting except 2 during my time, because they were so valuable. But in light of the situation, I think it would be easier and best if we just, I think the rotation is probably the best approach to do that and allow for as much, open conversation as you can on the Saturday calls.
Right. Okay. Yes, Carmen?
Thank you. I also agree with the rotation. I think that's probably the best solution now. And I'll volunteer not to attend this Saturday, so.
Yeah. Mayor Klein and then Councilmember Watanabe.
Yeah, I also second the concept of rotation. Last Saturday was the first meeting I missed since May since they started the first weekend in May of last year. And so it was good to actually be away, but yeah, it was kind of that sense of missing out. That being said, I debriefed with the city manager afterwards and found out what had happened. So I do think, our attendance, it's from a Brown Act standpoint, it's the appearance of any violation of the Brown Act. And I do think that as Margaret said, the range of topics is went far and wide. And I do think that has a lot of value that's valuable from that organization as well as this. So thank you.
Councilmember Watanabe and then Mayor Blankley.
Thank you, Chair Sayoc. So I don't believe the city of Santa Clara has been participating. However, I just have a question. I mean, I understand, the concern about the Brown Act and not violating the Brown Act. However, it sounds like there's a lot of important information being disseminated at these meetings. Does anybody share? I mean, would there be the ability to share what was discussed at the meetings? Or are they recorded that people can go and watch them later on? No.
No. I believe your city managers, what I do, and I can only speak for Los Gatos, both my assistant town manager and myself are on the calls immediately after we send notes to the full council as well as our town manager.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much. That's great. That's good to know.
And then Steve, and then I'm going to go to Mayor Blankley.
Well, I don't want to get in front of an elected official, but we do take notes and not so much minutes, and we don't do that to share, but we spend hours going over all the things that are discussed. So all the action items can be followed up on. So we do try to get out sort of a summary of the meeting that comes out maybe midweek. The problem we have is the staff is so busy with so many things that are coming up around this.
Thank you. And Mayor Blankley?
I cannot attend this Saturday, so that frees up a spot for somebody.
Okay, thank you. So Carmen, would you like to attend?
Actually, I was thinking about going out of town, so.
Okay, so even better. Okay.
I have tax appointments, so I'm not doing anything fun. I just can't. Yeah, it's tax season.
Okay, so I'd like to move us along. We have a couple more minutes left, so it sounds like we are going to move towards a rotation. Let's try not to overcomplicate this. Andy, if you could just run a rolling tab, that would be helpful.
Can we just share who's not going to be here on a Saturday? It sounds like some people miss meetings anyways, right?
No, I have never missed, but I have to miss this Saturday.
Okay, and I will miss this Saturday as well.
And I've only missed one.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I know number 7 was committee assignments. If no one objects, I'd like that is going to be emailed out, and then you will see your committee assignments. And if there's any questions on that, just circle back with Andy and myself. Let's have a city manager update. Ms. Pravetti?
Thank you and good evening, everyone. Just very quickly, the city managers met yesterday and we discussed the San Jose update with the food distribution program. Of course, we talked about COVID-19 and the vaccine distribution. And then we also finished our appointments to the other boards and committees that we serve with the elected officials, such as the interoperability committee, the library, et cetera. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pravetti. Andy, executive director update. You're on mute.
Sorry, I attended the COVID distribution work group, and I represent you, all of the cities. And then when I also forwarded a message to you today about they had a pop-up vaccination distribution for 65 and over. So you might want to look in your email. I sent that. I think I sent it this morning. It's first come, first serve. Which is advertised, but it's just a reminder that is sent. So I'm your point of contact when information comes from the COVID distribution committee. And for those of you that don't know, I also attend a lot of other meetings. I attend the city manager meetings, the assistant city manager meetings, the planning collaborative meetings right now while they're getting going, and sometimes the SCAPO meetings when they're also discussing the planning collaborative, just to make sure we can get that up and on its way. So that's what I've been up to.
You. And last on our agenda, we try and do joys and challenges, and it's just an opportunity for colleagues to share their joys and challenges. And so we thought it'd be good to bring that back onto our agenda if anyone has anything they'd like to share. I see Mayor Blankley and then Councilmember Watanabe. Oh, no? Okay.
I forgot to lower my hand, sorry.
Okay.
Mariko?
Yes.
Yes.
Also, don't forget about after joys and challenges, public comment.
Public comment, correct. Thanks.
Yeah. Just to share, I think at the last meeting I talked about how the city of Santa Clara, well, the Levi Stadium was being looked at as a possible mass vaccination site, and it actually happened this past Tuesday. There was an announcement in a press conference, and County Supervisors Chavez and Ellenberg were in attendance along with the governor. It's a collaboration between the county and the 49ers, and the city of Santa Clara is happy to be able to host this event, and just nice to be able to see the stadium being put to very, very good use. And since the 49ers can't play right now, so very excited about that. And hopefully the vaccinations will keep growing. I think right now it's 500 per day. So, and I've known several people that have gone and they've been very happy with the process. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to Santa Clara for hosting that. Mayor Du Bois?
Yeah, actually, two joys and a challenge. On Monday night, we talked about the teacher housing project for the county that's going up in Palo Alto, and that went really well. And then I also got to tour our new junior museum and zoo. It's really awesome, and they're starting to move the animals in. The challenge is we're not sure when it's going to open, but it's going to be great when it does.
Wonderful. Maybe when we're all live, you can all host us there one day. Okay, and I'm going to ask the public if there's anyone in our public who would like to speak, just raise your hand. Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much for 3 hours of your time tonight. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Night.
Okay.